a saying that goes, when you need something done, ask a busy mom. This is the story of how a bunch of busy moms formed a movement to address climate change and create a better world for our children. When my daughter Sophie was 4 years old, I was reading a book to her one evening that we had just brought home from the New England Aquarium. Sophie loved the pictures of the rainbow fish, the baby sea turtles, even the absurd-looking eels. But suddenly all I could think about was the article I'd just read, saying that 99% of the world's coral reefs would die during Sophie's lifetime because of climate change. I was showing her beauty and life that was doomed to disappear in a breaking world. I felt sick. That night, my mind was a swirl of frightening images: heat waves, droughts, wildfires, flooding, famine, displaced people, and all the children that would suffer because of it. I felt outraged as a mom whose #1 job was to protect my daughters, Sophie and Lucy, that our society was allowing these things to happen, and I wanted desperately to do something about it. But what could I possibly do? I wasn't a scientist or a climate policy expert or an elected official. In my mind, I was, well, just a mom. And I knew that any individual action I took, like driving my Prius, didn't make any difference given the scale of the problem. But I had to believe I wasn't the only mom out there who felt this way. I didn't have the courage to act on any of this until I met Vanessa Rule, who'd been working on climate change for several years in Massachusetts. Like me, Vanessa was a mom who was worried for her children and their future. She and I talked about the power of a mother's love. We wondered what might be possible if moms, fiercely protective, multitasking superhero moms, came together as an organized constituency to fight for their children's future. We had to find out. We formed an organization and called it Mothers Out Front. It turns out that what Vanessa and I were talking about, ordinary people joining forces to fight for what they believe in, is the only thing that has ever driven transformational change in this country. From women's suffrage to civil rights, from workers' rights to unionize to vital environmental protections, same-sex marriage, and reproductive rights, an organized movement of individuals can stand up to powerful vested interests and create a better world. Climate change is a problem of political power. We now know that the fossil fuel industry, the companies that produce oil, gas, and coal, has spent billions of dollars over decades to stop meaningful action on climate. They've done this by pouring money into political campaigns, lobbying aggressively against clean and renewable energy, and waging a massive public campaign of deceit, disinformation, and denial, with devastating consequences for people all across this country and around the world. How could one person or two stand up to that kind of power? We couldn't, but we could band together. And there are a whole lot more moms out there than there are fossil fuel company executives and their allies. Our first meeting was 6 moms in my living room. On that cold February evening, we took turns sharing our worries for our children and our dreams for their future. As we went around the room, we heard our own despair, fears, and hopes reflected in each other's stories. We brainstormed next steps, and each of us agreed to host a gathering so that we could expand our circle. We weren't alone anymore. In the 3 months that followed, Vanessa and I facilitated 23 house parties. Each one followed a similar format, starting with an overview of climate change, its causes and its consequences, followed by breaking into pairs where women could share their stories and get to know each other. After that, we talked about all the things that we might do together. And then everybody filled out a commitment card indicating what they were willing to do next. The house parties could be challenging. The moms asked a lot of questions and expressed a lot of doubts. What makes you think moms can make a difference? Is there any evidence of this kind of thing working before? Moms are way too busy for this. I'm not an expert. I'm not political. But even when they were skeptical, they were open and engaged. My favorite was the first grandmother-only house party I facilitated. As the women went around and talked about marching against the Vietnam War and for civil rights, I realized they had a whole different sense of what was possible when people came together to fight for what they believed in. One grandmother exclaimed, "I've got one more campaign left in me. This one's for my grandchildren." That's when I knew this was going to work. Soon, house parties started happening without our being there, as more mothers volunteered to facilitate. We formed community-based teams to make it easy for moms to come together and strategize and decide what they wanted to work on. Moms, many for the first time, started meeting with their elected officials and going to city council meetings and stepping up and speaking out. We had a few early victories in the cities of Cambridge and Somerville and in the town of Lexington. And then 1 year after the first gathering in my living room, we launched our first statewide campaign at a large event in downtown Boston. That morning, as moms and dads and grandparents and children streamed into the cavernous hall, the mood became electric. We set 2 campaign goals that day. The first, to convince 15 towns and cities to switch from dirty to clean electricity. The second was to convince the governor to sign an executive order banning new fossil fuel infrastructure in the state, things like methane gas pipelines, power plants, and compressor stations. Our moms went on to organize rallies in front of the State House, to lobby their elected officials, and a group of us did eventually sit down with the governor. He did not sign that executive order, but we were growing our power and getting more attention for what we did. Like when one group of moms discovered there are thousands of dangerous gas leaks from gas pipelines that run underneath our city streets, polluting our air, driving climate change, killing trees, and sometimes even exploding. Using maps showing where all the leaks are located, our moms went out and physically tagged gas leaks in cities and towns across the state with bright, colorful markers, making what had previously been invisible visible for all to see. One group of moms threw a birthday party for a 30-year-old gas leak. That one, complete with cake and balloons, that one made it into the Boston Globe. On one frigid morning in downtown Boston, over 100 people came together for a gas leaks tagging events, some of them dressed up as gas leaks and giant fluorescent blow-up costumes. That day, our mom sent so many tweets to the president of our local gas company that before the end of the day, she had agreed to meet with them. Soon after, a group of moms met with her and a group of other utility executives and developed a plan for fixing the largest leaks. We later learned that during that period at a gas industry conference, there was a presentation that featured a screenshot of the Mothers Out Front website. The presenter pointed to the screen and warned his audience, "This is what we have to worry about." Our successes have continued, and this past summer, we teamed up with a bunch of allies to ensure the successful passage of a bold statewide climate bill here in Massachusetts. Our work has spread to California, Colorado, New York, Virginia, and most recently, Kansas City, Missouri, where our moms are finding still more ways to push for change. Our moms have helped to stop the construction of new methane gas power plants and pipelines. They've convinced their city governments to require new homes and buildings not have gas hookups, but only be powered with clean and renewable energy. They've secured more accurate air pollution monitoring in their neighborhoods that can provide input for smarter and more protective policies. And they've convinced their school districts to switch their school bus fleets from dirty diesel buses to clean electric buses so their children no longer have to breathe diesel fumes. The list goes on and on. By working together on and winning campaigns, organized moms start to shift our political landscape and our culture. People see what's possible, and they want to get involved. Our movement is now 32,000 strong, with the goal of tripling in size in the next 3 years. Imagine what 100,000 moms could do. How about 300,000? A million? As we grow, we can win more campaigns that change policy and make people's lives better. But to be as powerful as we can be, we must create a movement where moms and caregivers from all backgrounds feel they belong, with a special focus on moms who live in communities that are hardest hit by pollution from fossil fuels and will bear the brunt of our warming climate. When we started Mothers Out Front, we had a vision of organizing moms across race and class and geography, women united out of our concerns for our children, our desire to make the world better for them. But we've realized that turning that vision into a reality is much harder than we had imagined. And so at Mothers Out Front, we are rethinking systematically everything about our work in order to put equity and justice in the center of all that we do. From how we work, to how we talk about what we do, to who we hire and where, and the campaigns that we work on. Because as a broadly diverse and inclusive movement, we can become a truly unstoppable one. We live in profoundly disorienting times. A global pandemic, an exploding mental health crisis, especially among our children, persistent racial and economic injustice, ongoing and severe threats to our democracy, and a new climate-related disaster nearly every week. In this moment, there is so much to fear, and that fear can turn into a sense of powerlessness and despair. One might feel the urge to turn away toward a form of isolation from the world, from our communities, even from each other. But we can make a different choice. We've discovered at Mothers Out Front that when we come together in community, we have the courage to confront our realities. When we come together, we find points of connection and shared purpose, and we start to believe that maybe we can make a difference. Apathy and despair turn into action and hope. Our very survival depends on this coming together, on our collectively rejecting the myth that we can continue on this current path, and asserting that all children, and indeed all life on Earth, deserve a livable future. You don't have to be an expert to have a voice to help shape where we go from here. Together, we can build the power to create a vibrant and equitable world for all our children, because that's what busy moms do. Thank you.